Good evening. This is Karen Udis. DCTV was unable to shoot live today because they're not working. There was some kind of a holiday for DC. I forget what that was. So today is the 15th of April, and there's a lot that I wanted to mention to you, and that's why I'm shooting this myself. I hope this works. One of the things that I wanted to tell you, people think that we're having a showdown, and that is absolutely correct. I have tweeted today to Donald Trump telling him that he's the scammer. He was just relieved because he seems to think he was exonerated from having rigged the elections together with the Russians. But as you know, because I've been telling you for many, many years, over 3 years, on DCTV. Each week I give you an update, and what I've been telling you is that there is a group that has been trying to convince people that they're in charge of reality, and they're absolutely not. They're liars. This group is the central bankers, and at the very center of that group is something called the black nobility. These families are descended from the pharaohs in Egypt, and they have been corrupting the world for over 9,000 years. We know this because of some sky maps that were put into the ceiling of a very old Egyptian pyramid called Khufu. And so what we've done, is all the people on earth, and we were assisted in tackling this corruption by a very wonderful hero who came from the Philippines, and he went into the Vatican, and that's Jose Rizal, and his lawyer was Ferdinand Marcos, and they established the World Bank for the purpose of peacefully resolving this corruption, and that's exactly what we're doing. I happen to be a lawyer, and what I've discovered is that the legal profession has been working for the bankers, just about all of them. You have to learn law from many of the people who have been studying it, not the profession. The profession is just about each person is corrupt. I tried for many years working with the American Bar Association because I didn't want to believe the extent of the corruption. And what you can see is that working together with all the whistleblowers of the world and many people, and now we're working with all of the military powers of the world. In 2004, I was in the World Bank legal department, and I started out just being a normal lawyer. And then when I discovered corruption, one of the things about me is that I'm very, very stubborn, and I was also curious to find out why all of the things that I was doing as a lawyer was not resolving the corruption, and the reason is because the corruption was so very deep, and many people, because of the things that this corrupt group has done, has become aware of the extent of the corruption. So, for example, they assassinated John F. Kennedy, and before that they had assassinated Abraham Lincoln, and both of these presidents of the United States were trying very hard to get rid of the corruption in the money. This corruption in the money is actually all of the world's money, and one of the things that Jose Rizal was able to do was he took all of the world's monetary gold reserves and he put that into a trust, and then he made sure that all of the people of the world could have a peaceful resolution of the problem through setting up a governance structure. By that I mean that all of the countries of the world can decide what to do with the world's gold. And they've actually already decided, that is, to use the world's gold to replace the paper currencies, because that's where all the corruption is coming from. And then the other thing that they decided to do was to leave it up to the people on Earth to decide what else to do. There's one other thing, and that is the oceans are dying because of the nuclear accident in Fukushima. So the idea is to get rid of all of that radioactivity in the oceans. And after that, when people have decentralized, and the way they're going to decentralize is by issuing currencies in the local communities. So the paper currency, which is where the corruption is coming from, is going to be replaced with the world's monetary gold reserves and also with local currencies. And then we're going to leave all of the decisions up to the people on Earth who are going to set up the governance structure so that they can make other decisions. And so what you have is you have a task which is basically ministerial that can be carried out without any involvement in the center. It can be done in a decentralized way, and so that all of the people in the various countries can organize themselves and they can decide how to reintroduce their governments, because all of the governments in the world are actually part of this big corruption, and Donald Trump is one of the play actors. The reason we know this is because the constitutions of all of the countries have been taken away, and now the governments are replaced by corporations. That's true in each and every case, and all of the militaries, in the United States, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, these are something called Knights of Malta, because much of the corruption is coming from the organized religions. Now, I'm not saying that all religions are bad. Of course I'm not saying that. It's up to the people of each faith to get rid of the corruption in their faith, and this is certainly true of the Catholic Church, because the Vatican has been part of this central bank corruption, and so have the mafias. And what I've been doing is I've been listening to many, many people. I'm not saying that I know all of the corruption. I certainly don't. And many of the things that I think are true are just a working model. It's like a puzzle, like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. All of the people on Earth are going to have to go back and retrofit things. And if we should decide to do anything, because there are decisions that are going to have to be made, the people, after they have decentralized, can go back and rearrange things exactly the way they want, because our idea is not to replace this banking cartel, which is what we're calling them. And in the center of the banking cartel is the black nobility. One of the things that has just happened recently is that there is a man named Jesse White who was part of this corruption. What he did was he decided to try to undo everything, and he sent me a letter just very recently, just yesterday, and what I did was I responded to that letter. And what also Jesse White was trying to do was, and I don't want to get too technical because this will be boring for you, but one of the ways that the bankers have managed to fool everybody is they took the regular law, the legal system, and they turned it into something called maritime law, which is what the bankers and the companies use. And what I did was I learned from people that there's a different legal approach, which is called the common law, and I used the common law to bankrupt many of the agents of the banking cartel. And so I bankrupted Jesse White, and Jesse White was trying to undo what I did, and he sent me a letter which you can read. That's one of the things, that's one of the ways we know that we are now ready, we meaning all of the people on Earth, that we're now ready to start taking over and replacing all of this corruption in the money. Because what Jesse White did was he undid the, he didn't want to be bankrupted, and so he sent a letter saying that everything that I had done wasn't valid. And of course what I've been doing is I've been using the common law. And I learned this from somebody who then tried to turn around and take over. What he did, there's something called a commercial lien. That's a way of bankrupting somebody who's corrupt. And so what, his name was Bruce Lewis, what the expert on common law commercial liens did was he tried to put his name on all of the world's property. And when I saw that, I realized that no, this man was actually something that we call, what's the word? One of the reasons, of course, that I use teleprompters is because when I'm on the hot spot, sometimes there's a word that I want that I can't find. When somebody is trying to make you think that they're fighting corruption, and it turns out, oh, the word that I was looking for is controlled opposition. Yes, Jesse White is certainly an agent, but Bruce Lewis was something called controlled opposition. And there's a lot of controlled opposition, including Julian Assange. These are people who will tell you a lot of truth mixed up with lies, and then they're hoping that they can fool you. So what we're going to have to do in going forward is we're going to have to learn how to distinguish between the lies that are being given to us by the controlled opposition and what's actually true. And what I've learned is that it's very difficult to distinguish, and so I'm just working along with everybody else. I'm not putting myself over anybody else. And there are some decisions that are going to have to be taken. For example, the bankers have stolen all of the real estate. And many people want their real estate back. And they're asking whether in this transition we can restore the real estate to the people who actually have paid off mortgages. And so there are going to have to be decisions that will be taken before we have fully decentralized. But the idea is not to rule from the center. And one of the very important things that was set up in the World Bank is that the World Bank is not going to involve itself in the politics of a country. That's called political activities prohibition. And that means that all of the people in the separate countries are going to have to decide for themselves how to get their governments to be responsive to the people in those countries, because at the moment all of the governments are corrupt. And what I discovered is in the United States there is, of course, a mechanism for putting the Constitution back in place. That's called Article 5, where the state legislatures have a very big role to play. But of course the states are also corrupt and the governors are also corrupt. So that the communities are going to have to all decentralize and clear everything from the very grassroots up. It's going to be a very big job. And in the meantime, because the militaries are all, now when I say the militaries, I don't mean the brass, the officers of the militaries. Those are corrupt. They're what we call gatekeepers. They're trying to make it difficult for people to get rid of the corruption. And so we're going to have to work very carefully, and especially with the militaries, to make sure that there aren't pockets of corruption. For example, the mafia is part of this this centralized corruption. So it's going to be very challenging for us, because there is not a single planet which has ever gotten rid of this amount of corruption, and we're going to have to learn how to do it. Now, I don't want to keep going on and on. I just wanted to update you. And next week, I'm going to be back at DCTV. What I like to do is I like to send out scripts so that people don't have to listen to the whole video. They can just read the script, and I'll cover most of the points there. What I've done is I've put in social media the highlights of what I wanted, the message that I wanted to give you at this time. This is really a basic turning point. There have been other turning points. One of the biggest turning points, actually, was in 2016, when the healers noticed that the energies had shifted. So we've been sequentially, in many different ways, making ourselves loose from this corruption. There is a physician, my doctor, who's done a study to see how our brains function. And what he's discovered, his book is going to come out soon, what he's discovered is that the way our brains function, it's possible to find out whether somebody is ethical or whether they need help in growing ethical. Now, this is very useful information. Most of us are actually much more ethical. Well, I'm going to have to end now, and I'll be talking to you in the coming weeks. I'll be updating you, but just remember, we're here to maintain the peace during the transition, and ultimately all of the people on Earth are going to decentralize, and it's going to be a different kind of existence when we're not subject to a centralized corrupt force. Thank you. Until next week.